Hello, I'm Andrew Vandervaart. I'm an MD PhD, currently in residency in psychiatry. I also do neuroscience research. Any views expressed in this video are purely my own opinions. So I was going down the rabbit hole of the JonBenet Ramsey case, more so than I have in the past. I guess during my free time around Christmas and it being like the anniversary time of this tragic case. I guess it comes into attention. And so for whatever reason, I spent the last few days taking a deeper dive down this rabbit hole. I think fundamentally this is a case that lends itself to two rabbit holes because there is not a single obvious answer. And I should say, I'm afraid that it may be that there will just never be a satisfying explanation of what happened. So if you're going down a rabbit hole right now and that's how you've arrived at this video, I hope you're mentally prepared for the fact that there's not going to be very likely a single obvious or satisfying explanation. It may be best to cease the rabbit hole here and move on with your life. But I do think that there are really tantalizing things about this case. Hopefully things that we could learn from, even if we can never be sure of what actually happened. So I want to approach really the Ramsey family from kind of a psychoanalytic perspective. I feel bad about doing this in a way because in cases like this where something really horrible happened and someone may be lying about it, but they may not be lying about it, it's kind of a difficult position to be in, where if they are lying about it, you feel this sense of moral outrage about their role, and even more so, or on top of that, their deception. If they're not lying about it, then they have every right to be outraged at people like me that might be implying that they are being deceitful, and I don't know that. So however, there are certain things that do really disturb me about the behavior of the family. Why don't we first start by talking about what I think may be a cautionary tale in this case and many other cases, which is the focus, perhaps obsession, on appearances. This is a family that did a very good job at maintaining an appearance of being a perfect and happy family. Of course, we know that that's never probably the case, and that it did not seem to be the actual case here. But that need to project a certain facade, I think, is going to say something about the psyches of the individuals making up the Ramsey family. I want to start, I think, with a Christmas card that was sent in 1996. I think there are other Christmas cards. There's an earlier one that I believe uses the word hence, which some people point out was also used in the ransom note. It's an unusual word. I don't believe this one has the word hence in it. All right, so here's the 1996 Christmas newsletter from the Ramsey family, with Patsy being the author, as evidenced by the use of I during her section. All right, dear friends and family, it's been another busy year at the Ramsey household. Can't believe it's almost over and time to start again. Melinda, 24, graduated from Medical College of Georgia and is working in pediatric ICU at Kennystone Hospital in Atlanta. John Andrew, 20, is a sophomore at the University of Colorado. So that's the two kids that are not Patsy's biological relatives get kind of one sentence each here. Melinda, guess got an MD, is now working in a PICU, which is impressive. John Andrew is a sophomore at the University of Colorado. That's all he gets. It kind of makes me think, well, maybe if once he does something that's got a little more esteem, a little more social cachet, maybe he'll get a little bit more of the Christmas letter next year. Burke is a busy fourth grader where he really shines in math and spelling. He played flag football this fall and is currently on a basketball binge. His little league team was number 1. He's lost just about all of his baby teeth, so I'm sure we'll be seeing the orthodontist in 1997. So I want to say these update Christmas letters. This was something that I do know was done in the South, at least in the '90s. Uh, obviously it's before social media, and so it was about updating your friends and family. You wouldn't necessarily send this to everybody that you were sending a Christmas card to, but you would put it in with your Christmas card to friends and family. I know that it can be very difficult, I think, to write these letters without just coming off like a braggart. If things are going well and you want to tell your friends and family how well things are going, uh, maybe there's a way to do it without just coming off like you're bragging. But I think it's difficult to pull that off, at least. Now, certainly there are people that are on Facebook and the like nowadays who are just as self-aggrandizing, just as braggadocious as people were in these letters. But I want to say, I don't think it's bizarre that Patsy was writing this letter. I'm saying I'm familiar with the custom, and with this tendency to maybe come off a bit boastful. But I do think there are elements of her psyche that are interesting, that we can glean from this. So for Burke, busy fourth grader, played flag football. Now he's playing basketball. His little league team was number one. So it's good to get any kind of accolade is clearly important, right? So you get something. His team was number one. That's an accolade. Great. He's lost just about all of his baby teeth. So I'm sure we'll be seeing the orthodontist in '97. So I guess it's a fun fact that he's lost just about all his baby teeth. But I think this shows that where Patsy's mind goes from there is Burke has to have straight teeth. That's like kind of that's what comes to the forefront of her mind when she thinks about his baby teeth, is seeing the orthodontist, because it would be unacceptable for him not to have immediately straight teeth. That's how I read that. All right, JonBenet is enjoying her first year in real school. Kindergarten in the core knowledge program is fast-paced and 5 full days a week. She has already been moved ahead to first grade math. It's an accolade, I think. She continues to enjoy participating in talent and modeling pageants. She was named America's Royale Tiny Miss last summer and is Colorado's Little Miss Christmas. Her teacher says she is so outgoing that she will never have trouble delivering an oral book report. So, I mean, in JonBenet is where the need for accolades, I think, is showing up most obviously, not only in this Christmas card letter, but I think that the whole idea of pageantry, I think, speaks to this need for social validation, right? I mean, maybe there are people that do pageants that do just enjoy it and don't need it. This is not a custom I know that much about, but it would seem to me that it would at least attract and reinforce people who have a deep-seated need for validation from others, right? And so she's maybe projecting that onto JonBenet, as people often indicate. It's featuring highly in her Christmas card, of course, because things are going well with it. Continues to enjoy participating. It's really hard to know if JonBenet really enjoyed it, right? I mean, when you're 5 or 6, you can learn that you're just supposed to like the things that your parents want you to like, and think you like it even. But depending on the parents, depending on how much freedom you're getting to really enjoy your own things, I don't know if we can tell whether JonBenet really enjoyed it. Certainly not just from Patsy saying that she's enjoying it. The book that comes to mind for me is, what is it? Alice Miller, The Drama of the Gifted Child. So if the point in that book is that kids who, particularly if they're kind of precocious and intelligent, will pick up on the things that their parents want them to be, the sort of emotional needs that the parents have that were unmet from their own childhood. A precocious child will identify those needs and will start performing in such a way as to meet those needs of the parent. And then there's this kind of dance that goes on where neither one is really being their true selves, right? That the parent is now just using the child as a way to get these unmet needs now met, kind of pathologically, rather than having already had these needs sorted out and then being able to have a kid and meet the kid's needs. Now the parent is relying on the kid to meet their needs, and the kid in turn is not getting their own needs met because they're sacrificing their true self for this facade that they realize is necessary for the parents' love, unfortunately, or their idea of love. I would say that it's possible. Like, I don't know this family, they're not my patients, but certainly there are people whose unmet needs are such that they maybe are not capable of real love until such time as those needs are met. If those needs are met. All right. John is always on the go, traveling hither and yon. Access, which is his company, recently celebrated its $1 billion mark in sales, so he's pretty happy. He and his crew were underway in the Port Huron to Mechanic Island yacht race in July, but had to pull out midway due to lack of wind. Parenthetical, can you believe that? But his real love is the new old-looking boat, Grand Season, which he spent months designing. So I think it's interesting, too, that I remember this from Christmas letters that I would read as a youth in the South, that you could see the little ways that the author, usually the mother, could kind of express these grievances about other family members sometimes. And so Patsy's characterization of John, number one, he's always on the go. He's traveling hither and yon, right? So he's not around that much, is what I'm taking from that. He's pretty happy because they got 1 billion in sales. But his real love is the new boat that he spent months designing. So one, he's got a real love. It's not me, Patsy. It's this boat. And also he spent months designing that. So another kind of indication that maybe his time and his attention are elsewhere. He's either traveling or he's designing this boat, which is his real love. You know, if I wanted to read in some indications that all's not well in that relationship, I certainly could from these 4 sentences, but it's speculation. All right. I spend most of my free time working in the school and doing volunteer work. The Charlevoix house was on the home tour in July and will likely appear in one of Better Homes and Gardens publications in 1997. On a recent trip to NYC, my friend and I appeared amid the throng of fans on the Today Show. Al Roker and Bryant actually talked to us, and we were on camera for a few fleeting moments. Okay, so 4 sentences there. I spend most of my, quote, free time working in the school and doing volunteer work. And then the next 3 sentences each have something about getting attention from like media, right? There's the house is going to be in the magazine Better Homes and Gardens in this coming year. On a recent trip, I appeared amid the throng of fans on the Today Show, and then we were actually on camera for a few fleeting moments. So it seems evident to me this is still, attention and social esteem, validation are really important to her. This is at age 40. A few fleeting moments on camera was like the highlight of her year. I mean, I don't know, maybe it would be for most people, but it's very clear to me that social validation is everything to her, essentially. All right. We're all enjoying continued good health and look forward to seeing you in 1997. One final note, thank you to all my friends, in single quotes there, and my dear husband for surprising me with the biggest, most outrageous 40th birthday bash I've ever had. We'll be spending my actual birthday on the Disney Big Red Boat over the new year. Merry Christmas and much love, the Ramseys. I'm not sure about friends being in those quotes. I mean, I think she probably meant it just to sort of highlight friends, like as though she were putting like asterisks around it, but it's got single quotes around it. I think if I were going to get really psychoanalytic and the sort of the idea that the unconscious or subconscious is expressing itself indirectly here, I could say, does she not consider her quote unquote friends, the people that came to her birthday party, does she not consider them her real friends? So they're sort of, friends. Does she feel like anyone is her real friend? I mean, that's the theme I'm kind of getting into with her, is this idea that social validation, I think, has taken the place of a true sense of self, right? So if she's not able to express her true self, this is like Winnicott, sort of the self psychology, true self or false self. Winnicott and Kohut will talk about the need to attune to your true self, or to be allowed to express your true self from good enough parenting, not perfect parenting, good enough parenting. You can develop the pure true self, which is just your sense of experiencing things as they are, rather than relying on a facade of the self that interacts with people in this sort of superficial, as if we were friends kind of way. I think Freud even talked about as if relationships among people with narcissistic traits. I can't remember exactly who said the as if thing. I think Freud. Winnicott, Kohut are self-psychology. If you want to read more about true self or false self, feel free. That is my concern with Patsy Ramsey, that you could probably look back generations such that at least her childhood was also likely marked by not being allowed to sort of just be who she really was, feel safe and able to get unconditional love. But this is how cycles of familial suffering work. So if that is the dynamic in the Ramsey family now, I expect they come by it honestly. And it is a very unfortunate life sentence to only be interacting with people as a facade. So far, that's my concern, that Patsy Ramsey has created a false self and requires a facade of perfection to maintain that self, that sense of self. Let's say that there are two potential challenges to the perfect image. One is potentially JonBenet having urinary and fecal incontinence. It sounds like there was a regression into bedwetting and possibly bed soiling. I know that was an early theory of the police. Psychologically, I could see it fitting with the idea that JonBenet a perfect child would be toilet trained by that age and would not be having these accidents. So it is an affront to what otherwise does seem like the perfect child, right? JonBenet has been remarkably adept at meeting her mother's needs. She's winning pageants. She's getting much social validation lavished upon her, and by extension, on her mom. I believe JonBenet actually told a friend who was looking at the awards and accolades in her house that, well, these awards, they're not really for me. They're more for my mom. Something like that, right? That was in the CBS documentary, I believe. But so, okay, soiling the sheets, could that have led to a kind of panic or rage, in someone with that proclivity to become extremely distressed at the lack of perfection, or at an object that is fulfilling the needs of the self suddenly showing itself to not be that perfect object, that could induce a rage. Now, I haven't seen anything else that indicates that rage was Patsy's means of dealing with that kind of stress, but we don't know that much about the tempers of anyone in the family, really. Another thing that makes you think about the dynamic between Patsy and JonBenet is apparently there were two kind of disputes between them on Christmas. One was that Patsy wanted JonBenet to wear a matching outfit with her, right? Sweater or turtleneck or something that would have matched. JonBenet did not want to wear it, and that was a source of friction between them. The other thing is that Patsy got JonBenet a My Twin American Girl doll, I believe. So a doll that was made to look just like JonBenet. And JonBenet was not thrilled, maybe even displeased with that toy, just didn't like the toy. And that was very upsetting to Patsy, from what I've read. Both of these things are interesting because so Heinz Kohut, who's written extensively on self-psychology, actually talks about one of the means of the false self to cope with the lack of a core identity. One of the means is alter ego or twinship. So Patsy wants JonBenet to be her twin that day, literally, just as Heinz Kohut would say, someone who's looking for a proxy for a true self would look to find an alter ego or an identity of someone who's very much can match very closely with your projected identity, and that's reassuring in a way. The other thing is she was actually projecting the desire for a twin or for an alter ego onto JonBenet by saying, wouldn't you like this American Girl doll that is your twin? Almost like going to a meta level of trying to establish this twinship bond. And then when JonBenet doesn't want the American Girl doll that looks like her twin, that would not fit at all with this need to meld their identities together, both of which I would argue are projected false identities necessary for the hole that cannot be filled in Patsy Ramsey. If she has this kind of core wound that I'm suspecting she might have based on similarities with other people in the psychiatric literature and history. Okay. But so the other potential affront, really an extreme affront to the happy family that Patsy seemed to need to project would be if Burke did something to harm JonBenet Ramsey, right? I'm going to talk more about Burke and try to get into his psychology in part 2. Suffices to say for now that if Burke did something, even if it were accidental, like he didn't mean to hurt her badly, if he did something that night, what would her reaction be? Partially, it would be to protect Burke as a mother does protect a son and as a father protects a son from being potentially taken away from them. But I think there may be something more too, that she truly couldn't have handled the reality of Burke doing something to harm JonBenet, that it would actually undermine her entire sense of reality, because her sense of reality is a facade of a happy family. So if he were to do something to harm her, if he were to have struck her in anger, it may not be solely the protective instinct that motivates her into action to cover up the story. Another part of it, I propose, may be the need to maintain a facade of a perfect family at all costs. And it's a much more acceptable thing to have happen to a family that it was that someone else did this other than someone within the family. Let's do some handwriting analysis. So like I said, we cannot analyze the handwriting of this Christmas letter. It was typed, but I'm not wholly convinced that Patsy Ramsey was a 4.5 out of 5, where 5 is a total exclude, non-match, that she was a 4.5. All right, so here's the real ransom note, right? Here's the real ransom note. Here's the right-handed sample. I don't know if you can see that too well. real right-handed. And then here's the real letter with the left-handed, Patsy's left-handed sample next to it. So what it seems to me is that it's certainly possible that the real ransom letter was Patsy either using her right hand and trying to make it sloppy, or using her left hand and trying to make it neat. So I don't know that much about handwriting as far as like from a forensic standpoint. I do know that handwriting is not dependent on the hand, right? It's emanating, your handwriting signature is emanating from your brain, because to whatever extent you can use things other than your dominant hand, there will be certain signatures in the letters, certain patterns in the letters that show up regardless. So if someone is writing with their left hand, there will be things that still show up that would have showed up if they were writing with their left hand. If they're writing with their foot, there will still be broad similarities between letter formation as with their dominant hand. Even if you attach a writing utensil to their head and they write with their head, there are elements of the handwriting that are transcendent of the means by which you are writing, right? So there's something about handwriting that's originating from the central nervous system, not the peripheral nervous system. So, when I look at some of these comparisons, I have to say there are letters that are formed exactly the same between the ransom note and some of her samples. To me, it looks like the right-handed sample that she gave. So she gave this knowing that she was getting a handwriting sample done. And it looks to me like she's actually trying to write in more of a block letter way, like almost like a typeset in that, after the fact right-handed sample. Then in the left-handed sample, I wonder if she's sort of not trying as hard to write neatly. She's like leaning into being messier with her left hand than she needs to be. If you can see that. But, those words that got pulled out here, carefully, and that here, whatever this publication was that pulled the words out, I agree with them. I think if you were to take each of these words to Patsy Ramsey and say, which one of these did you write? I think she would have a hard time saying which one was hers. And, I think most of us can pretty reliably tell when we wrote something. Not 100% of the time, but I think it's pretty telling if the person wouldn't be able to identify it, right? I don't want to spoil the jinx for you, but if you've seen the jinx, I'll just say, wasn't it pretty convincing when Robert Durst could not tell a few writing samples apart, right, when one was his? But when you watch any of the Ramseys get interviewed through the various media outlets, the videos that are available, when any of them are asked about the handwriting samples, they're obviously very intelligent, but they cannot concede that the handwriting looks similar. They're all so insistent that it's not the same. And I think that reflects almost I don't know if it's hubris or if it's just this same idea that they cannot surrender the facade of everything's perfect, and any suggestion that something is imperfect, even if it were not true that it's the same handwriting, wouldn't they just be able to admit that it looks very similar? But they cannot at all. They protest completely. They act like it's absurd to say the handwriting is similar. They'll say, oh, but the 4.5 out of 5. And I think that's kind of the tragic flaw of never being able to concede this idea that the way I see the world, everything has to be this way. Everything has to be right. Anything that speaks ill of me is ridiculous. I think that's kind of telling. I think they protest too much about the handwriting and many other things, but that's what I have time for right now. Again, I don't know if it's because of actual guilt or just this phenomenon of needing to maintain this artifice. In part two, I'll talk more about Burke, and I really appreciate anyone that watched this video. I hope it did something for you. All right, bye bye.